Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you happen to be around the world as you are watching this live stream here on hosting.com's Agency Success. My name is Nathan Ingram, and I am the trainer, the agency trainer here at hosting.com. And so excited you're here for this live stream, which is all about rewriting your website in an hour. And yes, we will be able to do that. We'll get to some of a website today because I'll be doing a lot of explanation along the way. But if you follow this process, it is very likely that if you have a typical size agency website, dozen pages or so, you can rewrite the whole thing in an hour and you'll be pleased with the content. And so what we're going to do is explain a process. We're going to be using Claude Cowork to do this, and I'll unpack all of that as we go. So let me just ask as we get started here. And again, if you are just joining us in Zoom, open up the chat and say hello there. The slide link, the download link for this document on the screen is waiting on you there in the chat. So quick question for everybody here. Are you happy with your current website? Let me hear it from the chat. Yes or no? Are you happy with your current website? And that's what I expected. Pretty much no. Yeah, a couple of somewhats. I am unhappy with my agency website as well. And so instead of rewriting my agency website, I've written this process to share with you. So anyway, if you are happy with your agency website, you are in a very small club. So most of us, the site we have, see if this resonates with you, kind of did it probably in a little slow week or something during client deadlines and just kind of pushed it out there to get something a little better than what was there before. And you've been meaning to get to it ever since. Does that sound familiar? That is certainly my case. And because it isn't a big enough problem to cost me business, then it's just kind of stayed there. So what are we doing here in this live stream? We're going to cover why agency website copy fails and the most common patterns that reveal that it's failing. How to build a reusable voice profile that travels with you into any AI copywriting session. We're going to edit our cornerstone pages. We're going to rewrite our key pages with AI without losing that voice. And we're going to organize the whole thing as a system that you can repeat for any client. Does that sound like fun? I am really excited about this because this absolutely works with an asterisk, which I'll get to in a minute. So we're going to walk through this complete process. And just a couple of notes about AI tools. This is AI tool agnostic, meaning you can, we're going to be working with Markdown documents. So they go anywhere. You can use it, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, insert your favorite AI tool here. It's going to work with those. However, we're going to be using Claude, and particularly Claude Cowork, because that's going to let us write directly to a folder on the desktop. It just makes this process easier. All right, so here are some of the reasons why our copy tends to fail. We know it needs work, but it's hard to know where to start. So here's a few places to identify where your agency website copy, or for that matter, a client's copy that you're evaluating, might fail, and see how many of these you realize that your agency website currently suffers from. The first is the wrong subject. So if you read the first sentence or the first couple paragraphs on your homepage, if it starts with we or our or your agency name, that's already kind of the problem. Visitors who come to your website, they're arriving with one question, and that's, can this person solve my problem? They're concerned about themselves. And if you make your agency the subject line instead of the client, you're already just kind of creating some friction that doesn't need to exist. Now, this is sort of a basic view of what's called the story brand marketing approach. If you're not familiar with that, you can Google it. It's brilliant. I like a lot of it. It's basically flipping the subject from you as an agency to the client. That's a big deal. And the test is, does the reader know why this thing I just said matters to them? Well, we build custom websites. So what? That's a description of what you do. You get a site built around how your clients actually make buying decisions. That's better because the reader is the subject. We answer every call is kind of in the middle because it names something the client cares about, but we've been in business since 2005. That doesn't connect unless you explain or you use that term in the context of what having that experience can protect the client from. See, this is a common failing I see around agency websites. Another one is features instead of outcomes. So we tend to talk about what we build instead of what the client gets from it. It's the old features versus benefits discussion. So custom WordPress development with custom post types. Clients don't care about that. Most clients don't care about that unless they're already tech savvy coming in. Responsive design optimized for core web vitals. Integrated contact forms with conditional logic and CRM sync. I don't know about that, right? So they mean something to you, but they don't necessarily mean something to the user. So the fix is the what does this mean to you bridge to kind of flip that content around. Name the feature, but then connect it to the client's life and business. Does this make sense? So it'll be easy for you to update your own site without calling us every time something changes. That's WordPress development and custom post types. Your site loads fast enough that people don't click away. Leads go straight to your CRM, so nothing falls through the cracks. Because if they can't picture how their world is better because of what you do, that copy needs to be switched around. Another one is generic language. So pausing just for a moment. How many of you already know that your website has a couple, like those first two errors? Like, yeah, they're pretty much there. Does that sound about right? Yeah. Okay. The third one is generic language, which is if you read something on your website and that statement could be true about everybody else's agency, that's a problem. So we deliver results-driven solutions for businesses of all sizes. Okay. Our team is passionate about helping you grow. Great. We combine strategy and creativity to drive your success. Fabulous. Every one of those could belong to any agency in any city around the world. So we need to make that more specific. So we name the client type, we name the outcome, we name the thing we actually do differently. Generic language is usually a symptom of writing copy without a clear picture of who you are yourself. So to articulate our uniqueness in copy is critical. And this process we're going to use is going to help us to do that. The last one is calls to action that don't connect. So a weak call to action doesn't tell the reader what they're about to get. So contact us. I mean, okay, learn more, get in touch. Do you have anything like that on your website? Probably. The reader, there's some friction there because they don't really have a reason to click because they can't picture what happens next. So the fix is what I call the eyebrow text pattern. I don't call it. People call it that. I'm using that term in this document. The button carries the action, but there's a little eyebrow of text right above the button that carries the meaning. So instead of contact us, it's find out what your site is missing, button, schedule a discovery call. Does that make sense? Keep the button short, the text short, put the outcome above it, and that one change can make every call to action on your website more meaningful. Okay, pausing for a minute. Does this all make sense? Like if you were able to go through your whole website and deal with these 4 common mistakes, and there are plenty of other common mistakes, but these are just 4, okay? How much better would your website copy be, and how much better would it convert? Does that click? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of yeses in the chat. Fantastic. Okay. So what are we doing here anyway? What this process actually is we're going to use generative AI to help us work through these copy mistakes and generate copy that resonates with you, okay? So I want to be very clear about something, and this is the asterisk that I mentioned earlier. We are using generative AI. We are not writing software, okay? And this is a big misconception people have about AI. And it's a reason that some folks get really frustrated when they try to use AI. We're not building software here. We're building tools to guide a conversation with generative AI. Okay, it's generative. That means it doesn't produce the same output every time you run it. And that's not a bug. That's just how generative AI works. I mean, you've noticed that, right? Like you can give it similar prompts and it answers a little bit differently every time. Usually correctly, but in a different way, right? So it's expressing itself, choosing different words, whatever, differently. So this process is not going to be perfect. This is not software where we can control every single piece of or every link in the chain. We're using a generative AI tool with a guided process that's going to get us eventually where we need to go. That doesn't mean that we might not have to stop and recalibrate a minute in the middle of the conversation. Does that make sense? Okay, Doug just said something interesting. Everybody take a second and read what Doug just said in the chat. in the chat. That's why I save each version answer in case I want to go back. That is something, my friend, that we're going to deal with in this process, because when you bring a markdown document into the mix, you are editing a document in the conversation. And you can see something on the screen, and if that's like what you want, it's going to commit it over to that markdown document. And that markdown document becomes the source of truth. And that is the secret sauce to all of this. Okay, so this process, pardon me, this process has 4 steps with 4 tools. The first step is we're going to build our voice profile. And there's a voice finder tool I'm going to give you that helps you document how you want your brand voice to sound. Then we're going to audit our existing website. And there's a site auditor tool I'm going to give you that flags every copy problem and produces a findings file that your rewriter is going to use as a roadmap. Then the third step, we're going to rewrite with AI. So the site rewriter tool works through your pages in priority using your voice profile and the audit findings to generate new copy. And fourth, we're going to check the work. There's a voice checker that will run a final pass over everything we just wrote and make sure this all aligns before anything goes live. Pretty cool, right? And it usually works really, really well. Now, this is a live demo, so we have live demo disease here, so it's very possible that something might go wrong. And I honestly kind of hope it does, because showing how to fix it when it goes wrong could be the most valuable part of this live stream. We'll see how it goes. Now, I would invite you to download the 4 tools. This is a zip file that lives in Dropbox. There's no weirdness here or anything. Download that zip file, and what you're going to get is a folder called Rewrite Your Website when you explode it, that has these right here, these 4 files in it. Now, I've created 2 folders. This is on it won't be when you explode the zip. I created an output folder and a copy folder under that. I'll explain why in just a minute. But in this document, or in the zip you get, there are 4 markdown documents, each one a step in the process. Does that make sense? Oh, okay. So when you explode the folder, you will have a typo, because I accidentally, apparently I typoed the folder that I compressed to give you that. So this was done by me, not by AI. And so you get mistakes. So anyway, you see what to do, right? You can call the website whatever you want to. It doesn't matter. Okay, now, the other thing I'll mention before we dive into the process is I'm using Claude for this, and particularly Claude Code, because Claude Code will let us write to and read from this folder directly. If you're using ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, you can still use this, but the difference is going to be twofold. First, you're going to have to drop these markdown documents into the chat, which big deal. It's not a big deal, but it's just easier if the AI can read them from the source. Also, when your AI, if you're using something like ChatGPT, your AI tool is going to produce content in the chat, and you'll have to copy that and create a markdown document and drop it in there. It's just a little clumsy. That's why I have really honestly moved into Claude for my daily driver for AI. All right, and for the question about where's the link, it is right here in the guide. If you need the guide, the link is in the chat here. So the zip file link is right here. Okay, so let's get into this process, shall we? We're going to build our voice profile. Now, the reason this comes first is that website copy fails because the writer doesn't have a really good, clear picture of what the brand should actually sound like. And asking your AI tool to rewrite copy for your website is going to produce competent but generic copy. You're going to get something like this that reads like it's from a Dilbert cartoon. We leverage cutting-edge digital solutions to empower your brand's online presence and drive meaningful engagement across all touch points. I don't even know what that means. But that's a lot of times the kind of stuff you're going to get out of the generic AI output, right? So if you don't want to do that, and we don't, then we need to do something different. So a voice profile is a short markdown file that captures in that document, as you build it, what makes your copy sound like you, the words you reach for naturally, the sentence patterns you use, and things you tend to avoid. And it's portable. It's going to be a single file, like one of these markdown files, that you can put somewhere on your computer and give Claude access to, or you can drop it in a conversation to give it context with whatever AI tool you're using. And that way you don't have to explain yourself from scratch every time. It's all right there in the document. And you can refine that voice profile and make it better. As you find things that it's doing that you don't want it to do, you can add it to the voice profile. So this is an editable document. Now, I've realized that a lot of folks may not be familiar with Markdown. And let me just show you what a Markdown document looks like. And why it's important. So Markdown, you can click there to view the Wikipedia explanation. It's just a simple way to format text. So like these, double star is bold. These are bullets. You've got a single hash is an H1. This is an H2. It's basically a way to create a structured, some structured text with semantic structure without having to have all the wrappers and all this, HTML garbage. It makes a very clean, structured, organized document that AI, and this is the key, that AI can digest more quickly and without using as many tokens as it would take to digest HTML. Does that make sense? So you can learn a little bit about Markdown. It's not, you don't have to be like a Markdown expert to use this. You can just write text in this file. But there are, if you want to get into Markdown, here's just a few viewers you can use. Many of them are free if you want to actually view Markdown and what it looks like. So this profile is a strong voice profile is going to have 7 sections, and we're going to generate those in this process. Quick use, core insights, tone, brand specific language, language patterns, sentence style, and then what to avoid. So how do we build our voice profile? Well, here we go. Let me drag Claude Cowork over here, and let me just quick poll in the chat. How many of you have used Claude Cowork? Just give me a yes. Have you used Claude Cowork before? So Claude Cowork is part of the app. It doesn't work in the browser because it's running natively. It actually creates a virtual machine, a little mini virtual machine on your computer, and it runs everything inside that virtual machine. And so it does have to have an app. The Windows app works, the Mac app works, and so forth. So it's that localization that's going to let us talk directly to this folder. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I've already done this just because I don't want to drop down my list of things here. In this Claude Cowork conversation, I have already selected the rewrite your website folder, so it knows all of this is here. So what we're going to do is we're going to run the voice profile builder, and it's going to ask us for 3 things. Something that you wrote that actually sounds like you unguarded, and the easiest thing to be is an email that you wrote to a client in response, a social media post, just anything that's just naturally you. If you don't have any one of these things, it's okay, but it's better if you give it all 3. So something you wrote that actually sounds like you, a page or pages on your site that you feel good about, and a page or pages on your site that feels generic or off, not quite exactly what you want to communicate, okay? Now, those 3 sources help to triangulate in what your actual true authentic voice really is. It does it pretty well. Sometimes it takes a little dialing in depending on what you give it, but the more information you give it, the better the output is going to be. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with Karen's website and profile. I'm about to have 800 windows open here, I'm afraid. And let me get to the right spot here. And let's get Karen's website on the screen. Karen is at thestudio88.com. And so here's Karen's website, which we're going to access in just a minute. So I've got everything that I need. Okay. So I'm going to just come up with a prompt here, and I'm using WhisperFlow to do a voice prompt to make this easier. Let's create a voice profile using the voice-finder.md file that you have access to. And we're going to do this for studio88.com. I'm just going to enter that. Now, what Claude, it takes just a second for Cowork to spin up. So it's currently preparing a session. And in this point, it's building a little virtual machine on my computer. And in a minute, it's going to go read that profile. You'll see it pop up over here as, okay, it's finding the files. There it is right there. It's got the instructions loaded in. Isn't that cool? And so you'll start to see documents as we're building and accessing other things. We'll start to see a little document library pop up over there that, as it's bringing context into the conversation. So as it's doing this, I'm going to answer Stacy's question in the chat. How do you connect WhisperFlow to Claude? No. So WhisperFlow is just a dictation app. It's an app that in anything you're doing, it just uses your microphone and dictates whatever you type. It can go anywhere. It can go in your browser. It can go into your word processor, whatever. So it's just an app that lives on my Mac and runs. All right. So it is, so Claude, well, so did Claude search for the file? Yes, because I told it at the beginning. Remember, it had that, I mentioned it had that selection for rewrite your website. So I'd already pointed it to the folder where all these markdown documents live. So it's read the voice finder instructions. It's fetching the site. Now, in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and give it the three things. It's probably going to ask for this, but I'm going to give it the three pieces of information that we need. So what I'm going to do, I've already kind of looked at Karen's website. I'm going to go grab the services page. Whoops. I'm going to grab the services page, the about page, and I'm going to grab a couple blog posts and the home page. All right. So, and it's giving me some information here. Here are a few pages that we like. And I'm going to grab the URLs for the web design services page, this page, and in the blog, what I've noticed is I've kind of done a little pre-work here to make this go a little faster, but Karen has a couple of blog posts here that really sound more personal. This one sounds the most personal. And we'll grab, and then this homepage, Karen and I have already had this conversation. She actually brought in a copywriter to write the homepage, and it's actually a little bit different. It's a different voice than the rest of the website, and it's a little more agency generic. So this homepage is a little more agency generic because we brought in a copywriter for it. So we probably don't want to use this kind of text. Let me grab, we'll just go with those. I think that's enough. So here's a couple of pages we like, one that we like the most, and a piece of copy that we don't really like. This is enough to get us going. If we had more copy samples, it's going to give us better output. That makes sense? So this is going to take a minute. So what it's doing is it's going through and it's going to look at all of these particular pages and do some evaluation. So look here, it's fetching our 3 pages. And it's going to give us some feedback here in a minute. Now, as this thing is running, what I want to do, and this is another reason I really like Claude Cowork, especially for the purposes of this demo, is I can click on this file and it's going to show me over here in a preview what this file contains. And it's in a markdown viewer, so it's appropriately sized, the headings and bullets and all that. And it just makes it a lot more readable than what you saw on your screen a minute ago with the hashes and all of that. We're just going to kind of take a look here. This is the instructions that's following right now. So depending on your tool, it'll tell you what to do. Okay, we've got some feedback here. Homepage copyright. Look, see, and it agrees. It's the only place on the site where the voice goes generic. Isn't that interesting? And so it's evaluated all these things. The real Studio 88 voice lives in the specifics you'd never find on a competitor's site. We answer, no voicemails, no multiple contacts. Your luck is our luck. That goes with the 88 type symbol. No smoke and mirrors. Those aren't marketing claims, they're commitments, right? So it's started to extract a little bit of Karen. And Karen, does this sound like you about like what you're looking for with the kind of copy you want to create? Does this sound pretty authentic? Okay. So the question in the chat is, what is the instruction? What's in the instructions file? That's what we're viewing right here. This is the markdown file. And again, I got to that by clicking on the voice finder file. It shows you where it's located and you can click it. And this is just a set of instructions lining out the steps that this is going to follow. Okay. So does this feel accurate? Yes. So it's going to now start to build based on everything it's processed and looked and learned about Karen in that little view of the website, it's going to create the first shot at the voice. So this does take a minute. So I'm going to just jump back in here and let you see the whole process. So we're telling it we're trying to extract this person's voice brand. The keyword is extract. The voice is already there. Ask this question. So this is where it's asking for the three things that we've talked about. Step one, read everything before asking. We tell it how to do that. Step one, ask a targeted question, kind of reflects back. This is where we just went through, right? This kind of sounds like this, or these specific phrases I saw were these. Does that sound about right? And that gives you a second, like a sanity check to make sure that what we're about to create as a voice profile actually aligns with what's going on in the chat or what it's thinking about generating as a voice profile. And in the chat, Lydia's asking, what was the instructions, Claude? That's something that Claude generates as part of every co-work session. So we're going to kind of ignore that for now. Now, what we're doing here is the rewrite collaboration. If they share a page they don't like and you still don't have a clear sense of the voice direction, we're going to get some clarity. So if it took like and analyzed everything we had just given it and it didn't have a good direction, it's going to ask some clarifying questions. So it gives some additional things here. And again, only when material is thin, there's a fallback interview. Now it's got enough to proceed. It thinks it can generate the profile without having to ask some of these interview style questions. So now it's where we're at. We're in step 5. It does take a minute to do this. All right, so it's doing something. We're going to build the profile. And that's where we're going to head here in just a minute. So this is the voice profile format. So when it builds the profile, it's going to have these sections in it. So there's going to be a voice identity, a core insight about the brand, the tone, brand specific language, and so forth. So these are all the things that are going to be in the file that the voice profile writes. Then it's going to go through and just with a quick look at some of the copy it's already looked at, it's going to show some opportunities of how the voice can improve the existing text. All right, let's see where we are in the to-do list. We don't know what we're doing. This is taking longer than it normally does. Let me just go over to the chat. Helen is asking, you just gave it the home page and our about the owner page, and it seems to have found other things about him not on the page. That's interesting. So Helen, it should have only looked at the URLs that you gave it. That's interesting. I'd have to see exactly on your computer what it's doing. But again, this is a perfect example of this is a generative AI tool. We're giving it a process, and sometimes it does its thing, right? That's the kind of the way AI works. But it should give you a result. And you're saying that it actually really nailed his personality and voice. So that's great. That's what we're really after here. So I'm glad to hear that. TJ asked, can this read an archived site on the Wayback Machine? Probably, because it's a URL. And if you give it the URL, it may take forever to pull up, but it'll probably open that. I haven't tried that before. Sue was asking, what is the process? How long did it take to get all the demo stuff ready? It took a little while. But this is part of the work I've been doing just day to day in my agency is how can we leverage AI to solve some of these problems? Okay, this is taking far too long. Normally this only takes, like a couple minutes. So another nice thing about using Claude Cowork or Claude Code is that you can continue the conversation while it's working. So this is exactly what I was concerned was going to happen with a live demo, and we'll get to figure out where we're stuck here. I don't, it normally Claude is talking to me and letting me know what's going on. I wonder if Claude is just slow right now. That is possible. Yeah, Karen, this is the one of the many benefits and why I've moved to Claude Cowork and Claude Code as a daily driver, because you can talk to it in the middle of as it's processing something that'll actually affect what it's working on. I do not understand. Okay, it's trying to build the voice process. It's building things. It just got stuck. Interesting. I'm going to stop it and restart. This is something you can do. Um, please write the voice profile based on what you've learned. Oh, it's not Karen's fault. Okay, so it's thinking. We're going to pick it up and learn again. Maybe, I don't know, it got stuck in a loop or something. I will say that of the probably 10 to 12 times I've run this process since I finally worked it out, this is the only time it's done that, of course. And if you're running it literally right now, you might already have your voice profile. Let me just ask, if you're running it right now, tell me in the chat, is your voice profile finished or did it get hung like mine did? It's probably just me. So strange. Yeah, see, finished. So it's just the guy who's broadcasting live that it's given a problem to. Okay. Now, the good news is if this takes much longer, I am going to stop and pull in the profile that I wrote earlier just for this reason. When it's completed. So let's see here. Question: did you craft the voice finder file? I absolutely got help. So all of these things, this whole process was me thinking out loud with Claude and documenting that process in a series of markdown files. Okay, here we go. Finally, thank you for creating something. I think we're writing it now. I'd much rather use the live output than go to something I stored earlier. I'm going to give it like one more minute. Any other questions that are coming up in the chat? Does your Claude have a name? I'm about to give it a name right now, and it's not going to be flattering. Oh my. Okay. All right. I'm going to give up on this one. Okay. I don't know what this has literally not ever happened before because, of course, it's going to happen in a live demo. But many of you are already, yeah, it wrote out the thing and whatever. So, what I'm going to, oh no, there it went. Okay. So it wrote the file. You see, it heard me threaten. Okay. Now it wrote it here in the root folder, and I'm going to tell it, I want you to move the voice profile and any other output into the output folder, please. So I want all of the rest of the output stuff, just instead of being mixed up here, this is just me being particular, but instead of it getting mixed up in these instructions, I want it to go to the output folder. So it's going to run and it's going to move that file there into the output folder. So we are all good. So we now have this detailed voice profile about Karen in Studio 88, which is pretty darn cool. Now, let's move into the next phase of the work here. So once we have that, we're going to go into the second step, which is to audit our site. So we're going to find out what's broken before we rewrite it. So we can use the same chat at this point. We do have to be careful, even though we're using markdown documents. The longer a chat gets, the more context is involved. It starts to lose the sharpness of the output. That's just the nature of AI. Markdown documents help because you're saving the best work along the way. But in a minute, we're going to switch to a new chat. So we're going to run the site audit. So the site audit tool, I'm actually just going to get this thing started, and then I'll go back and explain it just in case we get another snag. All right, let's run the site audit using site-auditor.md. And here is the sitemap for the site in question. Okay, so I'm going to go to Karen's site and sitemap. I've already looked this up because she's using the Yoast plugin. There's her sitemap. So I'm going to give it the sitemap and let that start. And then I'm going to talk about the audit. Okay, so this audit is doing a couple of things right now. It's going to go and spider her site and take a look at all the things. It's going to map the structure and it's going to flag some copy problems on the key pages of her site. And so we're going to need both the voice profile and this audit results and the flags, the things that it thinks that need to be corrected. So we can do this in the same chat. We can tell Claude to use that auditor tool and then give it the sitemap URL. So it is reading the Cornerstone pages and it's going to output two things. It's going to output first the audit findings file, and then it's going to create a content gaps checklist. Now, this is super helpful because it's going to be looking at your site, and based on what it's learned, it's going to suggest for you pages you might want to create, some holes or things that maybe are down, buried in a page that maybe ought to be elevated. So it's going to go through and give you its best thinking about that. It does have a couple questions. So is the Markdown alternate plugin installed on the site, and should it save to the same output folder? All right, so what I'm going to tell it to do, I'm going to talk about Markdown alternate in a minute, but I'm just not going to have it use that for this process. So that's yes and yes, or pardon me, no and then yes, and it'll start this whole audit process. Now, you may have heard me talk about Markdown alternate on another live stream during office hours, for example. This is a plugin that was created by Yoast and his team. And basically what it does is it allows you, or it lets WordPress generate a markdown version of a page or post on your site by just appending MD at the end. So if we were to go here to Studio 88 and the About page, and we change this to .md, it's going to show up here as maybe I have internet slowness. That's really weird. This should not, there we go. So it basically outputted the content of the page as markdown here. So it's a way to make AI digesting the page a little easy. But the reason I'm not using it here is because I've noticed that for some reason, all of Karen's page content isn't showing up here. And that could be what's preventing all of the markdown from generating here. But this is a good plugin, and it's often very useful in this process to speed things up. Now, as an alternative, and this is definitely something I recommend if you're working with Claude, you 100% want the Claude Chrome extension, because what this is going to do is if Claude can't grab the page with its normal web fetch, and let's see if it's doing that right now. Yep, it's doing web fetch. If it can't grab it, then this gives Claude the ability to pop open a tab in Chrome, load the page, and interact with or just read the page content. This also lets it get around any of the blockers, AI blocks that would otherwise prevent an AI tool from reading the content of the page. So if you use Claude, you 100% want this Claude Chrome extension. All right, so we are still fetching all of the things. It's just running slow today. That is interesting. Now, what this audit is going to flag, it's looking for the errors that we talked about at the very beginning of the live stream, where the wrong subject is there, like you are the subject of the sentence instead of the client, where there's features without outcomes, where credentials as status rather than how that connects to the benefit to the client, weak calls to action, generic language. It's also going to point out what is working, and then it's going to generate that file that I mentioned earlier, which is the content gaps, places that you might consider creating a page to add content where there isn't any. So while this is still running, this is running way slower than normal. Like 2 hours ago, I ran this for the final time in a final check, and it was much faster than this. So I will turn my attention to the chat for some questions. Elizabeth is asking, are my kids home eating up the bandwidth? No. Let's see. Helen is asking, can I save the whole voice profile conversation from Claude? Okay. So Claude, well, depending on what, or if you're using Claude in CoWork, it should have written that out as a markdown file. If you're using another AI tool, it should have generated the voice profile as text on the page that you could copy. Then you'd just have to create a file called voice profile .md or something like that and paste the content in there, because that's all these are. These are just files, but it needs to live as a file, because what that does is it allows your AI tool to reference it if it can read your file system. And if not, it can allow you to just drag it into the chat. And that way you don't have to remember all the things that it learned about you. You just drop that file in there and it immediately has context about what your voice needs to be. Does that make sense, Helen? Let's see. Jeffrey said, I had Claude tell me the .md files have to be used carefully or Google can flag them as duplicate content. That's interesting, because duplicate content is not a thing on the same site. So the same domain name can't have duplicate content. You can have pages on your domain that Google indexes that are virtually the same. It's duplicate content is when it's referencing another URL. So that's some Claude information that may not be correct. Let's see. Yeah, Elizabeth, the Markdown, you'll need to use the link in the document to go to the Markdown alternate plugin, because it lives on GitHub. It is not in the WordPress plugin directory, because Yoast in the WordPress plugin directory, whatever. There are things there. I am currently using Claude, the Max plan. I went ahead and upgraded because I'm using it so much. Okay, let's see where we are. Still got, we're only on step 1. This is absolutely ridiculous. So in this live stream of rewrite your website in 2 hours, we're approximately halfway through. I cannot believe this is taking so long. This is crazy. Yeah. So, and the weirdest thing here is this didn't happen before. Now, what I can do, is a fall. I really want to do this live, but as a fallback, we can go back to the previous conversation over here where I was doing the same work earlier for Karen's site. Okay. Helen, will this project be saved to my profile? I'm not sure what that means. When you say profile, Karen, the chat will be saved over here in your chat history. Yes. My goodness. Okay. So we're hung again. Claude is just going so slow today. And at this very moment, it's going to be slow. So I deeply apologize for the frustration. I went through this whole process live about 2 hours ago, and from start to finish, it took about 30 minutes. Crazy, crazy. Sue is asking, can you log out and start again with those files? Yeah, I wonder. Somebody talked about rebooting my Mac, and I wonder if that's honestly, I wonder if that's part of the issue. I can't imagine that it is, but this is odd. So just be aware that sometimes you may have these issues. All right. Well, like we're just stuck here. You're stuck. Please continue. So strange. Now, one thing that does affect the time for this to work is how many URLs you give it. See, it's going faster now, I think. Question in the chat about came in late. What is a voice profile? So if Scott, if you'll look at the document, I'm going to drop the link in the chat here. It is all explained there. Everything is there. So you can just quickly scan above here and it'll step you through everything and where we are, where we are. It's essentially a single file that contains everything an AI tool should need to know to write in the authentic voice of your agency or brand. Okay, I'm gonna just give up on this. So let's go back to a previous bit of work here. Let me find the okay, here we go. So this is a previous conversation with chat. Let's see. This is where we did the audit earlier. And what I'm going to do is we're just going to pretend like this is live, okay? We'll let the other thing continue to go and maybe it will give us something. However, it just gave us some results. Ah, no, that's the other one. Still going. Okay, so I'm going to go from here and we will pick it up. Okay, so you'll recognize this process. Is the markdown alternate? Do you have a folder? We did that already. Okay, so it went and read all of the things. I have everything I need, writing the output files now. So both files are saved over here on the computer. Let me see. I'm gonna go ahead and just drop those into this conversation so we can still kind of work live. So I'm going to pull in from the other conversation the audit findings and audit gaps. You got stuck, so I pulled in the audit findings and the audit gaps MD files from a previous conversation. Can you see those? So it should, and this is again, the value of those markdown files is I captured all that and it lives in these markdown files. And so a completely different AI conversation can read about it. See, let me read them, get fully caught up. They're solid and complete, all done. Okay, so again, this is the value of using this markdown system to store this information that you're generating. So let me pause just for a minute. We kind of bumped around. Is everybody on track? Are there any questions I can answer to make sure everybody's on track here? So the two files that I just added over here are what this should have generated, but it's hanging up for some reason, and I'm not sure why. Something's going on with Claude. So does this make sense? Is everybody with me here? I'm going to assume from the silence in the chat that we're all good. Okay, so we have our results. Excellent. So let's keep going. Let's talk about rewriting. So we're at this point, we're going to start a new chat because we've used a lot of context in this current chat. And in my experimentation, it starts to wander a little bit at this point. So I'm going to start a new chat, new task here in Claude Cowork. We're still using the rewrite your website folder here. So it will have access to all of these things. And we are going to say, let's start this rewrite process. I'm just going to copy that, paste it in there, and let it get started. So, and again, if you're using a tool that requires you to drop in the markdown files, you can just drop in everything you've done so far. In this case, it would be these three files, the audit findings, audit gaps, and your voice profile. So that'll give it all the context it needs to start to work. All right, so it's reading everything, and maybe this one will not get stuck. All right, it's doing things. This is good. Okay, I think we just got unjammed from whatever was jamming us up. So this is excellent. Scott, does Super Grok do this too? I have no idea. but I've never used Grok. But this, uh, you can do you can do this with any AI tool. You can definitely drop your Markdown files into Grok or Super Grok. Writing to actually files to a folder is something I think only Claude is doing right now. There may be others. I think actually the Chat GPT Codex will do this, but it helps. Having like allowing Claude to write to particular folders and only giving it permissions to write to that folder is really helpful in the process of working day to day. Okay, so it's reading all the things, and okay, it's checking the different pages here again, and it's going to give us an output. So it is reading every page on the priority list that the AI findings generated. It's checking its understanding against the core insight in the voice profile. And then for every page, it's running an internal check to show you anything that's there that should be addressed. And when it finally spits this out, it is pretty darn cool. So everything's happening behind the scenes now. And what it's going to do, it's going to step you through a page by page review. And then you're going to move on. Now, the helpfulness of doing the review of the content page by page is that it's going to start with a homepage, right? And we're going to kind of, if there's anything off, we're going to dial in the voice even more. And whatever changes it sees that we're making, like we don't like this, we like this, we don't like this, we like this, it will update the voice profile. We'll tell it to do that. So that the next page, it's learned from its mistakes a little bit and it's getting a little bit better. Okay. We have read all the source pages. So the site is doing something interesting and frustrating at the same time. Testimonials are genuinely remarkable. They are not generic praise, they're specific outcomes. But the moment you leave the testimonials, the copy reverts to exactly what the voice profile flags. At Studio 88, we're here to help you grow your business, which is fairly generic, right? The SEO page has the best original line, putting a billboard in your basement. That's a good line. And then immediately it undercuts it by making Studio 88 the subject of the next sentence. The real voice is there. It just gets getting pushed to the back. Karen, does that land with you? So it says, I have write access to your project folder, and we're going to put it out in the copy. Excellent. So the priority list has 7 pages, and there they are. I recommend doing the top 5 in this session and starting a fresh chat. So that moves into this section. When we're doing this rewrite, it makes sense to do it about 5 pages at a time. Now, if you've got a page that's 5,000 words long, that's probably going to need to be its own chat. But it's going to access all this other context because we've saved that in Markdown files. But 5 typical pages is about right as a rule of thumb for this process. We're going to do just a few here right now. So we're going to actually tell it to start with the homepage. We're actually only going to do a couple of these now. Let's start with the homepage. Okay, so it is now going to write for us a homepage. Now, in the meantime, while it's thinking about this, let's actually look at what it generated for these audit findings and audit gaps. So this is the audit findings. There's a lot here, right? So it looked at these cornerstone pages, what's working on the homepage, what's broken on the homepage. And these are just files. Like you could go in here if you wanted to, if you have a text editor or something that edits Markdown, and you can change this text if you want. That's another great thing about this whole process. This is not code, really. You can edit. This is just text. You can edit it. So it goes through, what's going on with the homepage, what's missing. Here's some stuff on the about page, what's working, what's broken, what's missing here, the meet the team page. So it's gone through the whole site on the cornerstone pages and given a pretty good overview of the kinds of things we're going to want to address on a rewrite. And all that's sitting out there so that as we start a chat, it can loop through that document and rewrite based on its findings. Now, the audit gaps that it created, what is it missing? um, case studies, results pages, individual pages for the remaining services, a dedicated about page about Karen. And some of these I've found aren't 100% accurate. Okay, well, look, we're writing the homepage. Exciting, exciting. Sue has said something good in the chat. This review is ego challenging. Yes. Okay. Karen and I talked about this ahead of time because um, this is ego challenging for anyone, right? And I'm so grateful that Karen has allowed us to pick apart her website here because all of us, like I think everybody on the call when we answered this question earlier, there are very few people who are satisfied with their copywriting. And so, this pushes in on that. And so I'm really grateful to Karen for being open and transparent enough to let us do this on her website. My website, honestly, would be worse than this. And so, okay, let's see what it said. All right, here's what changed and why. We can view the file. We'll get there in a minute. Hero, expand, prosper, grow is replaced at websites that work. Let's just see what it viewed. View the file. Okay, so hero section. And this is where, okay, sometimes on the first page, it might not be exactly there. So we're still going to dial in the voice just a little bit here. So let's just say tagline, websites that work, people who answer. Pausing. What do you think about that, Karen? Websites that work, people who answer. Convert your visitors into repeat customers. It's a little generic, but it kind of goes with this uniqueness. But just this phrase, Karen, how does that grab you? You have a vision. You need an online presence that brings it to life. We build websites, branding, and marketing. See, we're missing a little bit. We got a we here. So it still didn't follow its own instructions and it didn't give us eyebrow text. Sometimes this happens, right? So we need to say, in the hero area, you have a we statement that needs to be dealt with. Also, I don't see eyebrow text over any of the CTA buttons. So we're going to let it take a look at this. Lydia is asking about keywords. Okay, so this process doesn't take into consideration SEO keywords, but I think you might be able to see how easily you could integrate it simply by saying, as you're rewriting this page, use these key phrases and it will work those in. Does that make sense? Paul, have I put any clients through this process? Yes. Eyebrow text is when you have a call to action button, there's a little line of text over it. The line of text tells them what's about to happen. And the button is a verb and action statement of click to do this. Hmm. Oh, goodness. Thank you, Scott. That's an unfortunate typographical error. Okay, which statement the hero, the tag needs to be addressed? My statement should have said in the hero area, you have a we statement that needs to be dealt with. Also, I don't see eyebrow text over any of the CTA buttons. All of the CTA buttons. All right. That's another nice little UI for Claude Cowork that I really like as it asks you, it'll step you through a series of questions. Pretty neat. Ben is asking, what is your process for back and forth with a client doing this? Did this live one time with a client to get their feedback. Karen is saying, isn't that her copy existing already? And that's a good question. Oh, it is. Look at it, didn't rewrite anything. Also, you didn't rewrite anything in the hero from her existing homepage. What's going on there? So let's see what it's going to do about this. That is interesting. Again, this is part of the process of working with generative AI. Let me show you what it did. This also could be live stream itis. So this is what it wrote before. Am I in the wrong? This is what it generated before. Uh, you've built something worth finding. Your website should prove it. Studio 88 builds custom websites, brands, and marketing strategies for custom home builders. No one team that picks up the phone and gets it right. Start your project. See our work. So we're going to dial in the voice a little bit here in this first step. Sue is asking about maybe it doesn't think I like the first set of results. Um, these are totally separate conversations and they exist isolated from each other. But it is about the fifth time I've done this for Studio 88. Let's scroll on down here. Uh, is your website bringing in clients right now? I don't particularly love that. We could dial that in a little bit more. Got some decent copy here. It's rewriting the hero. All right. So what we'd be doing at this point is just going through here and pointing out anything that we don't like about the output. Um, based on everything we've learned here, update the voice profile so we don't keep making the same mistakes. So anything that we notice that it's doing that we don't like here, we're going to update the voice profile so that it doesn't do this on the next page. I'm just going to run forward to one more page and see what kind of output we get. Let's move on to the next page. So it found 3 lessons. We could ask it which ones they are, but I won't for the sake of time here because we're already just a few minutes over. I want to get at least one more page out of this. Ah, there are the 3 things. Yes, let's do the services page. So now we're going to take a look at the services page and see what kind of results we get from this. And as it's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and move in and explain the next section here, which is the final step in the process. So if you've gone through and you've rewritten several pages on the website, your voice profile will get dialed in even better as you go. And just tell it things you like, things you don't like. Remember, look at anything we learned here and save it to the voice profile after every page. It gets better and better as you go. The final step is going to be to run the voice checker. So what this is going to do is look at everything it wrote and give it one more final pass to just see if there's anything that needs to be dealt with. If it's something duplicated or if it's any of the audit flag items, it's going to make one final pass across everything to make sure it's a good set of consistent content. All right, now we're creating something, so that's positive. Now, while we're waiting on that to go, I'm going to open the rewriter and just let you see, or pardon me, the checker, so you can see what that looks like. Oh, we have content. Okay, So services page rewrite, the main structural change, reframing the page from capabilities list to problem matching tool. Intro tells visitors to browse by problem, not by service name. Okay, well, let's see what it came up with. Services. All right. Page header, services work. That is the existing page header. Most clients come to us knowing something is off, but not sure what to fix first. Browse by the problem. Each service tells you what it solves. Find yours. Not sure where to start? If you're not sure what you need, the website workshop is the right step. Start with a workshop. Services listings. Website workshop discovery project. Marketing. Now, notice how everything is angled at the client here. So it's given us the kind of copy we're looking for with some good eyebrow text and calls to action. All right, so decent. And all of this now lives here in as a discrete markdown file. All right, let's just go ahead and run the fourth step across these two pages so you can see how that works. Review all the copy you've just written using the voice-checker.md to make sure it aligns with the voice profile. This final step is going to let it just take a look at everything and make sure everything is going to align. Now, the nice thing is this should be pretty quick because all it's doing is reading local markdown files. So it's flagging a few things that it wrote, and it's going to offer some suggestions. And just a note here, I've been using Claude Sonnet for all of this. This is kind of the middle of the road Claude model. There's one below it called Haiku and one above it called Opus. For this kind of work, Sonnet is probably right. You would get probably a little better result with Opus, but it chews on tokens like it's candy, and it will use up your allotted usage very quickly. So notice how this is going back through and it's tweaking. It's suggesting a few tweaks. And so your response to each of these can be whether you like it, to fix it, give us another suggestion or whatever, and it'll commit those changes back to the markdown documents. So we got a lot of good information here. Do we want to apply the fixes? I'm going to pause right here. So the next thing to do is, of course, find a great markdown tool that you like, and let's just open this thing up and read it like it's an actual document and just do a sanity check to make sure we edit anything. Just a human reading. Read it like you're the client. Read it like you don't know anything. You're not quite sure what you're looking for. Just kind of read it from these different perspectives and make any final edits. But you should have at the end of this some pretty usable text. And at the end of all this, you've got a whole series of you've got audit gaps it's a great to-do list of new content to generate for your client. You'll have a whole bunch of pages, and you'll have a voice profile that when you get ready to write your next blog post, reference the voice profile as a file or drop it in the AI chat, and it's going to write in the same style that the rest of your website is written in. So this approach is currently the best way I've found to keep content straight if you're trying to use AI to help you generate content for your website. Because you're recording it. It's not forgetting context because you're recording it in these markdown documents. All right. We've gone a long way today. We've gone over time today. Thank you for hanging with me for a few extra minutes here. So let me just pause and see if there are any other questions in the chat that I missed. Sue wants to know how much my Claude usage. I don't know. Let's check and see. I do have the expensive Claude account right now. 14% of this chunk of the day for a 4-hour chunk. So not too bad. And I think we got stuck around a circle at the very beginning there that was using far more tokens and usage than it should have. So it probably would not have consumed this much. Other questions. Is there a trial period for Claude Pro? I don't think so. Now that the one I'm on, the Claude Max, there's definitely not a trial period. The Claude Pro, which is like $17 a month, they might give a trial period, but honestly, it's $17. I would just experiment with it. It's worth it. Sherry is asking, how soon will this replay get loaded? That's a good question. The media team, it usually takes 3 to 4 days, but I don't have a direct answer. Doug, are you running Claude Cowork on your main driver computer? Yes. Yeah. Claude Cowork is not like OpenClaw, which I would never run on my daily driver computer because of security problems. Claude Cowork is very contained. That's what I like about it. And even though I can give it access to certain areas of my computer, it's isolated to that. You have to grant the access, like it had access to that folder on the desktop, and that's it. And there's other things I can say about that, but the Claude is pretty good about security. Let's see. Are there questions in the Q&A? I am sorry. I totally missed that. Okay. Let me answer those questions. Okay. Scott we've answered that question already. Gene asks, when you use the voice finder, does it take into consideration editorial style preferences, or do you need to tweak it afterward to contain such things, like write headings and sentence case? Gene, what a great question. So as part of the voice profile, like its job is to look at your existing website and extract from it your authentic voice as closely as possible. That's what it's trying to do. Now, when you have it generated, what I would say, if you have a list of things that are editorial style, you can say, here's some stuff from our editorial styling, work this into the voice profile, and it'll add that into the voice profile. Let's see. So, Gene, did that answer your question? TJ, more of a general AI platform question, but I heard recently the paid version of ChatGPT will not let you easily export your chat or memories, but the free one makes it easier. I'm not aware of that. ChatGPT makes it difficult for you to export things full stop. There are ways to do it, and that could be a future live stream topic. I've done it as I've kind of gotten out of ChatGPT and into Claude. Gene, using Claude Cowork uses your computer resources. Does it use much? It is using the processing power of your computer to do some local things, and it's also going out to the cloud and back. So there is some usage. I haven't noticed it dragging things down, and I don't know how big the files are. It's a good question. It has to be also, yes, it has to be connected to the internet in order to work. Gene is asking, would it still be beneficial to offer only the service of adding Markdown to your existing website? I don't think that's super great. I mean, it depends. Like nobody knows how AI search works. There are a lot of people that are trying to guess at it, and they sound very convinced in their opinions about generative GEO, AIEO. Sounds like a children's song. A lot of folks have a lot of opinions. All of this is still experimental right now. From the best people that I've talked to, people have kind of a leaning and some ideas and some notions, but it's hard to know. So, does having a markdown version of your site help? It could. It doesn't hurt. I don't know that I would like lean into charging clients to do that. It's just installing a plugin. Yeah. Let's see. Gene is asking, the process seems more complicated than just asking chat to rewrite a page using a story brand method. That's a great question. And that's a fair criticism of this process. I will say that it's never been, of course, it's never been this hard except when I did it on the live demo. And it usually goes much faster. The value of doing it this way with a set of markdown documents and a process is um, it's going to be a more thorough rewriting process, and you've got documented voice profile and documented page content and everything that can refer back to each other in the AI tool. And so ultimately, the quality is going to be better across many pages. Does that help answer that question a little bit? Scott, what about using something like this for a brand new site? Absolutely, you can do that. Great question, Scott. Thanks for asking that. We called this rewrite your website, but it could be write your website just as easily. The key is we shortcutted some of the stuff at the beginning by giving it URLs that were already written, sort of as context of what we liked, what we didn't like. As long as you can provide copy at the beginning of what you like and hopefully what you don't like, the what you don't like really helps to solidify the voice. So if you can provide that from other sources, you can still generate the voice profile to then move forward and rewrite the rest or create the rest of the content. Does that make sense? TJ, my wheels are turning as to the next steps. Is there a proven process to translate the output of this to an agentic workflow of having AI update the site? Of course there is, especially as you go into what WordPress 7 is going to bring and the agents and the agent connectors that are going to show up in core WordPress. The problem is going to be those agent connectors may not know how to interface with your particular page builder. If you're not using just the straight block editor, that's going to be something that has to get figured out. But that's absolutely the next step, TJ, and you put your finger on it. Okay, let's see. Gene, can you say again how you implement Claude Cowork without giving access to your computer's sensitive material? Sure. When I start a new task and I don't give it access to anything, no, I want projects. I can just start from scratch and not have a folder, and it'll just be generic. Or I can give it access to a specific folder on the computer, and that's where it lives and works. Does that make sense? Billy, are there privacy issues with this? You'd have to explain a little more detail what privacy means in this case, Billy. All of this content is going out through Anthropic servers, right? So, but it's also going to be on the web. So, are there privacy issues? I don't think so. If by privacy you mean is somebody's personal information going to somehow get folded into, I mean, not unless you give it to the chat, because the chat is staying isolated to that particular folder in Claude Cowork. You obviously don't want to put API keys or passwords or anything like that in the chat. So, Sue, does Claude keep your questions and its answers? Yeah, it's all in the chat history here. So just like I went back and kind of fell back to the earlier version when I did this before we had this problem, or as we were having this problem, it does save it in your chat history like every other AI tool does. Sue, does it use it to train itself? I have no idea. I have no idea. And honestly, it's using whatever it wants to train itself anyway. It's just, this is where we're going. And we have to decide how we're going to respond to that. And I've fallen into the side of This tool is the future for where we're headed as people who do tech work proper with clients. AI is part of the future, and we're going to have to learn how to use it. So my encouragement to you is to experiment, figure it out. I was telling somebody this the other day, and we're way over time, and I'm going to close with this. I was telling somebody this the other day. The way I feel about AI today is the way I felt when I was about 11 years old, and the guy across, my buddy that lived across the street from me, got a Commodore 64 computer that had a modem. And it was the old school modem where you took like a handheld phone and set it down on the modem and it communicated through that. Like it was the oldest old modem you could find. But when we sat there in his bedroom and discovered that we could dial in and talk to other computers, it was this, it blew my mind. And it just started all these thoughts of what could be, what we could do and what we could be and all the things. And that eventually evolved into the internet, right? This has that kind of draw for me where the possibilities are absolutely endless. And this already has changed the world and it will continue to change the world. We can't ignore it. It's not going away. We have to learn how to use it. So with that, we'll land the plane. I invite anybody who still has questions to join us during office hours on Thursday. That's open to anybody. Office hours is at the same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific time. Questions are open. You can ask anything you'd like. I would encourage you all to try this process between now and then. Give it a shot and see what happens, and let's talk about it during office hours. And I also want to be very sure to thank Karen for opening up her website for us to use as the guinea pig for this rewriting process. So thank you once again, Karen, for your willingness to be the guinea pig. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out for a very, very long live stream. And I'll see you back here for office hours on Thursday here on hosting.com's Agency Success, where we go further together.